In this episode, we'll be chatting about complimenting strangers, how we went, what we struggled with, and what we enjoyed. We'll be chatting to the amazing Andrea Turner-Boys from Women with Altitude on how she works with so many women and people and how she's able to share joy and compassion with them in the way that she shares with them. So we'll be picking her brain on it. Let's get started.
Do you ever feel bogged down and overwhelmed with advice?
We are living in a time where good tips, tricks, and hacks have never been more abundant.
From Facebook to podcasts, mentors to 6-week courses, it seems like everywhere we look now, somebody is telling us what to avoid or how to improve.
So where do you start?
We thought we would start with taking some advice, not giving out more.
We're going to road test just a few of the world's ideas and suggestions, seeing how easy they are to put into practice, and we'll meet a few experts along the way.
This is Advice Takers and Habit Makers.
Awesome. Okay, so we are back with our next episode, and Sarah, I want to find out a little bit about how you went with the challenge from a last episode. We set ourselves this challenge. Do you want to explain what it was?
Sure. If you've listened to our last episode, you know that we set ourselves a challenge to compliment strangers, and we were pretty ambitious in what we set ourselves, in the task that we set ourselves. We wanted to compliment one stranger every day, I think we said. So it started off pretty ambitious, and I've got to say I struggled with this task more than I expected to. And it wasn't because I didn't want to compliment strangers, and it wasn't because I felt shy or inhibited or, I wasn't motivated to, because of course I was. But I found that it was harder to find people that were, I guess, living in the present or sort of approachable, I suppose, and trying to initiate that dialogue and approach people, I suppose, out of the blue, I found a lot harder than I was expecting. How did you go with it?
I found it not hard, but it was hard in the sense that I realized I don't go out enough. That sounds really terrible, doesn't it? There were days when I was just home the whole time. And I was like, I haven't seen any strangers today. So it was just people I knew. But the times I did it were really quite poignant. And once I got into it, I kind of was like, wow, I'm doing really well. But it was interesting. In terms of the times that you did do it, how did people respond?
Well, I found the same thing as you. I found that I was complimenting people, aside from events that, you and I were obviously at, which aren't necessarily, I wouldn't call them strangers. If we were in a room networking with people, I wouldn't necessarily call that, they might be strangers, but for the purposes of this exercise, I wouldn't say they were. I did it mainly when I was in the supermarket and picking up my kids from school, and I realised exactly the same thing as you, that I don't go out enough at this point in my life. I'm not immersed in enough, situations where there are strangers. That's what I found really hard as well. So unless I was going to the supermarket or I was talking to a mum at school or walking past a kid, with a cool hat on, I wasn't out there enough. Is that what you found as well?
Yeah. And also, like you said, how do you define a stranger as well? I was at work, so I've started a little bit of work for a naturopath who's lovely. And if you have someone coming into the office, but you are, say, the person working there, are they a stranger because you don't yet know them, but you will in a minute? Do you know what I mean? How do you define? Is it just randoms, which is who I started complimenting eventually when I really got into it. But I suppose it's how you define who a stranger is, and
And I guess if they're coming into
I
your
have
workplace,
so many questions.
we're going to talk to you in a second.
I have so many questions. I have so many questions.
If they're coming
listening to
into
what
your
you did.
workplace, if they're coming into your workplace, then you've sort of got that point of connection as well. You know, it's not like you're approaching somebody in the fresh fruit section going, you know, I absolutely love your boots, because
Which
you
is
know
what
there's an
I
expectation
did,
you're
but
going
not
to
in the
talk to
fruit
somebody.
section.
Yeah.
But that's my question. What was the compliments that you did? So I know that I get that it was awkward, or you realize you didn't go out very much. I think that's for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But what was it? Was it because, you know, like if you sit at the bus stop, right? And you're not really catching buses. If we sit at the bus stop and you strike up a conversation rather than giving a compliment, it can go one of two ways, right?
Yes.
You can have person sitting there going, oh, sugar, they're talking to me and I don't want to have a conversation. Or is it a compliment, just a passing, you know, gesture of kindness?
That's the other thing that I noticed, is that sometimes it wasn't really necessary to be complimentary. You know, it was just, I realized that some people, and I've got to say it's probably older people in the supermarket, they just wanted to have a moment of human connection, you know. So we talk about, you know, the breads that upset your stomach the least, or, you know, what is this vegetable, that kind of thing. It wasn't always that I needed to go, okay, I'm looking you up and down trying to find something that's complimentary.
Which is harder.
It's just like, you know what?
Harder.
It's a gift of your time. It's a gift of your time to say, look, you can talk to me. I am approachable, you know. I'm not going to brush you off and go do my, you know, go find my own bread or whatever. So,
exactly.
it was definitely both, I found.
And just talking to people, I don't find that hard. Like, I'll just talk to anyone. But finding compliments, actually, like yesterday there was a lady at the donut shop. Not that I should be there, but that was my kids.
Blame them. Sure.
So I was in there with her, and she was coming out, and she had like a really nice purple top on. So I said, I really like your top. That looks really good on you. And she was like, oh, thank you. You know, like, and she was like telling me it's lilac and that kind of thing. And then the day before that, I'd been in a conference and we were just outside having coffee, and there was a lady there, and I just said, I really like your skirt, because I genuinely did. And then she smiled at me. But do you know what? I will tell you one quick story, because I know you love my stories. I was at a coffee shop and they were a little bit busy, and I complimented the lady at the counter. She was taking my order. I complimented her, and we were in the middle, you know, the middle of her taking my order. So maybe it wasn't the best timing, but I said, oh, you are doing an awesome job. You know, I like to tell people
that's what I did too. Yeah. That is what I did too. Those people, then those customer serving roles,
though. Did it backfire on you? Because this backfired on me, because she was so busy. She didn't even hear me, right? She was just like stressed out, and she just kind of talked over me. And I was like trying to tell her, you know, you're doing a good job, you know, awesome job. And she just was like, but like, you know, I don't have half my staff here. It's really busy and blah, blah, blah. And so she hadn't even listened. And the whole time, this is just an offside. So maybe I probably won't go back to this coffee shop, because the whole time they were looking really grumpy, and I'm like,
she was just having a day.
So I'm like, that didn't make me feel like, that wasn't very nice. Anyway, so but most of the time,
she wasn't really receptive.
Yeah, she was just too in her brain and stressed out. So
I think there's only one time where I felt it didn't go well for me, and that was when I saw a kid walking out of my kid's school, and I said, oh, like he had like a big, it was a boy with like a really big pink hat on and like really long sort of long ears on. It was like a jockey hat or something. And I said, oh, great hat. And the mum said to him, say thank you. And I thought, you don't have to say, you know, like this is not an exercise in, you know, talking to strangers. It's okay. He doesn't have to say thank you. I didn't say that, obviously, but I kind of, you know, you sort of walk away going, yeah, I mean, I'm still glad I said it, but, you know, it didn't have to be a learning moment, let's say.
Yeah. Well, we've learned something through this exercise. Are you going to keep doing it, Sarah?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think doing the research for the last episode we did really made me aware of the value of complimenting people and how it connects us as a community. And as I'll mention soon when we get talking to Andrea, what the value of complimenting is for, certain cohorts in the community. So I do think it's really important, and I don't think how it's received should should affect your intention to keep doing it, or sort of the reaction that you think you'll get. So I'll definitely keep doing it. What about you?
Yeah, well, I kind of do it already, but not the complimenting bit. So maybe I could put a bit more effort in, even a bit of edification. We could take it, I could take it that next step, depending on who it is, but I won't be doing it at the coffee shop. They weren't very happy with me, but looking out for opportunities to talk to people and compliment them, I think is awesome. So on that note, I think this is a good chance for us to chat with the lovely Andrea, and we're going to put some information in the show notes as to a little bit more about the amazingness of Andrea. But just I want to say, because we're going to ask you a bit about yourself in a second, Andrea, but I just want to say Andrea is amazing. She has a beautiful energy around her. I've known her for almost a year. I think you've known her a bit longer, Sarah, but I've known her about a year.
Yeah, I think I'm probably about the same as you, I would say.
Yeah. So Andrea is someone
kind of connected.
Yeah, there's all those little connections that we all have, and you kind of know of someone, or Facebook keeps popping up your picture, so everyone knows you. But Andrea's just someone who's very genuine in the way that she approaches people. She loves people. She looks after them. She's part of and runs, and that this is her baby, Women with Altitude, women's networking, which is in a few different locations. I shouldn't say a few. I don't know how many locations it is, but you can tell us in a minute, Andrea.
It's 9.
9 locations throughout New South Wales and in Canberra, which is pretty exciting. But being such an amazing connector, Andrea, we thought it would be good to chat with you a little bit on how you find complimenting strangers, but just on how you connect with other people as well. And I'm going to let Sarah kind of take over from this point as well, because she's got some more specific questions to ask you.
Yes,
also.
I do.
So, but first, actually, we should let Andrea maybe tell us a bit about her.
Yes, tell us a bit about you.
I've done a little intro, but you can take over for a sec.
Okay. Well, all right. So, thank you. You're very, very kind. All of the beautiful things that you say is very sweet. And so thank you. It's still something that I struggle with hearing. But I'm just trying to put my best self, I guess, my best foot out there in the world. So thank you for being so kind and complimentary. It's interesting because that's what we're talking about, right? How funny. A little bit about me. All right. So in a nutshell, the short version is that, yes, I run this women's network. I'm really passionate about elevating women, and I also really passionate about business, but it's kind of more than business. It's really about, finding out who we are and, how we can elevate each other and help each other, enhance those beautiful qualities that we all have. I'm a mum. I hope I'm getting a lot of messages. Sorry. I'm a mum, so I have a grown-up son from my first and awful marriage, the mistake that I made in my youth. He's 33. Wow. And I have 2 children from my second marriage, 2 daughters, Annie and Molly, and they're 17 and 18. And both my son and one of my daughters have had a different disability. So my son has Tourette syndrome and my daughter is on the autism spectrum. So it's, that's a part of life that colors, it's a path that you go down that you didn't expect, that builds all sorts of resilience and lessons and things that come with it. And I've been in business now for 21 years in my own business. And that's kind of where I just, moved from having a gift delivery service into Women with Altitude and helping women connect and build their businesses and build their confidence, I guess is how you'd call it. Is that kind of a quick snapshot? That's
Yeah,
very
that's
broad.
amazing. And you do such a good job. We just, appreciate, everything you do and the energy that you have behind it, because that's super important. You're always someone who lifts up other women and, elevates them, as you just mentioned them. That's your goal, and you definitely do that.
Yeah, well, because I've been doing it before it became trendy. So it's kind of become trendy to talk about it now. And which frustrated me a little bit, because like, it was exciting in a way, but it frustrated me when I see that's not always the case. That becomes a tagline or a motto rather than the authentic stuff. Does that make sense? Or like even the word authenticity, right, Sarah? We've chatted about that. It's become a buzzword in marketing to be authentic, or to have really that authenticity. It's like, well, hang on a second, we were just doing that before that became trendy. So it's kind of like, because then all of a sudden you're all kind of being looked at through the same lens, and it's like, and like, we know it's not two things are the same. So there you go.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. All right. So I guess the reason that we asked you to guest star in this podcast is because we know that you do bring people together, and you're able to, well, certainly in the events that we attend with you, you're able to, I suppose, turn strangers into friends and see the things in people that others may not see, helping people to to be present in their whole selves, and to and to definitely accept compliments as well. You're somebody, as Larissa said, who lifts people up, so being able to help people to accept those kind words is really important too. So I'm curious to know, when you're not networking with us and attending events and so on, are you somebody who compliments strangers? Do you make that part of your life?
I do, actually, but it's funny, I don't call it compliments, although that's probably how it shows up. I just call it sharing kindness. Does that make sense? Like, I just
Absolutely.
feel like I just want to be kind to people. And this kind of goes back to about nearly 30 years ago. I did a lot of personal development when I left my first husband, and I was a single parent on my own with a 1-year-old baby, and I'm like 21 years old, and I had no idea what I was doing in the world. And I started working on myself, and the pop psychology, I did insight seminars, there was forum, there was a whole lot of things back in the day. And the one that I did was insight, which was called the Awakening Heart Seminar. And what I loved about this 5-day workshop that I attended was it just completely opened my eyes. But what I loved about it was heart. Instead of just being a mind or a head thing, it was really about connecting your heart. And that spoke to me in ways that just literally redesigned who I was in my life. Like, it changed everything for me. My parents thought I was in a cult, and I wasn't in a cult. It's just that it changed me that much. And it definitely wasn't a cult. It was just a seminar, but it was beautiful. And it was called the Awakening Heart. And so one of the things that came from that was unconditional giving and unconditional love and kindness. And it's selfish, because it's actually what you get back from that. It's such a win-win for me, right? Because someone else receives something great, but you get something wonderful as well. And so what started with unconditional giving, do you remember the Harbour Bridge and the bridge toll? So I was the one, I used to drive the bridge toll and pay for the people behind me. And because you do the toll. And I love that, because you don't know, you split off on the road, you can't see, you don't know who they are, you don't know who you're giving it to. And so I would pay the toll and say, can you just pay for the next person? And the toll people thought it was hilarious and fun. And look, to be honest, they might not have done it. They might have pocketed the money. And look, I don't want to be the cynic inside. All of us could probably go down that path. But I do know that it used to happen, because I'd had some toots and some waves, and
yeah,
for me, that was the very first unconditional, because you just don't know who they are.
Sure.
So this is something I could just talk about so long. So when you were saying before about making compliments, I do the same thing in the store all the time. Especially, you've been standing behind someone in a queue where someone else is giving them a really hard time, or someone's being not so kind, I will absolutely go out of my way. But I will often even touch. I'll reach out to them. I said, "You're doing a really great job," because for me, it's like, well, who tells them that? Well, you remember the stat about how many times we correct our kids versus how many times we compliment them, and I think the balance is trying not to blow smoke up their bums, but be genuine. Right.
Yes.
So in that moment that I'm standing in the shop and I'm seeing someone treat someone of service who's just trying to do their job unkindly, then I'm going to want it. Then I authentically want them to know they're doing a really good job, because I can see they're doing their best. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes you want to counteract all the negativity that's happening. So it's kind of like trying to course correct the scales, right? Of how many negative things they might have heard with the positive.
I think I can remember times where you don't even need to have a conversation. If the last customer has been a bit of a handful, and then you give that sort of knowing smile to the person at the checkout going, man, that they're a piece of work, and they kind of smile to themselves, you've almost, obviously having a conversation, there's no substitute for expressing it through words, but even those moments when you just go, oh man, that was
really good to know. It's really good to know that, or for someone to tell them. So here's the thing I think about, right? In the little old lady in the grocery store that you were talking about before, Sarah, talking about the bread or whatever. It's that thing of empathy, right? It's everybody's got stuff going on, and for some of those people, it may be the only contact they've had all day, or all week, right? So can let's just use this moment to just be kind and just give them a minute of especially if they spin into a little story or whatever. I just try and stay present and listen and smile. And like the key is you just got to want to, I think, and do it from a genuine space. I just, because I think we all felt times that went in our life when we didn't feel we belonged or we felt alone. And so I just draw on that.
That's so good.
So what do you do when you can sense that somebody's, I guess, closed off is the best term I can think of. How do you sort of break through that? Maybe they sort of got a bit of a, you just can't get a read on what their energy is that day, let's say, and they're just kind of closed off. What do you do to kind of break through that armor that they are wearing, or just that sense of wanting to, not reach out and connect to people? How do you break through that and sort of make somebody feel like they can connect with you?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? You don't really think about, it's a great question because you don't really think about it. You just kind of do it. But I think that I've come across a lot of people like that. And I tend to, one of the things that, and it does freak people out, is I am someone who, I don't care what you drive. I don't care how big your house is, your bank balance, anything like that. What I care about is people and humans and how we interact and love. That's at the end of the day, that's what anyone wants to be, is happy and loved and have a position in the world. So I don't care about those things. So what happens to me is I tend to go deep quite quick, which can freak people out, because when I have someone who's a bit closed off or, is that shielded, well, the first thing I always sense is, well, maybe there could be trauma, there could be something going on. So I immediately try to go to that. And then I will just, try and ask a deeper question. Are you okay? Is there something about, trying to make it relative potentially at networking? Is this something that you don't enjoy doing? Like, I just try and get to the real source of it, or have a meaningful conversation with things that are real rather than superficial. That's kind of how I do it. I very much rely on my gut. So it's more of a sense. And look, and there are some people that are really tough nuts to crack. And at the end of the day, I will just be light and complimentary, because you know how there are some people who just want to be complaining, a little bit like your coffee shop. She wasn't even open to hearing a compliment, because I'm sure you weren't whispering, Larissa.
No,
right?
I wasn't.
So she just wasn't even in an open space to even be able to receive or absorb something positive, because she's so consumed by her negative drama and vortex. Like, you know, that's and look, we all get like that sometimes. But you just do your best. You just do your best. I don't know if I answered your question, Sarah.
Oh, you did. Absolutely you did, yeah. So in our last episode, I referenced some research that I found that for women over 50, getting complimented by a stranger is the number one thing that helps them feel good about themselves. So it's like the number one thing that brightens their day and improves their self-esteem and all those sort of things. Do you find that to be the case? I know that you're definitely in this, women sort of in the middle of their lives, say, is definitely a big part of your life.
Definitely in this demographic. Yes, definitely.
I'd like you to unpack that. Why do you think it is that we, thrive on being complimented? I mean, why do you think it's such a big deal that we feel, our day's instantly improved when somebody notices us?
Oh, look, I don't know if it even has to be a compliment. Well, look, two things that I immediately think of. One is I think it shows, if that's a study and it's the number one thing of women over 50, like to me it shows a study that they're feeling incredibly invisible, or whatever circumstance in their life where they don't have access to that kind of feeling. Like, it just makes me sad. Because if someone compliments me, I mean, I was in Canberra last week and I have bright red hair, and I was just like charging through Westfield to get some shampoo, and I didn't even stop. And this woman has, with her son, she just goes, "Oh, I just love your hair color," and I just went, "Oh, thanks." I just kept walking, and I kind of chuckled. I thought we weren't even really in the same orbit. And I had a little chuckle. I thought, oh, that was nice. Did it make my day? Well, no, because I think I've got a fairly healthy self-love or self-esteem myself now. But, for people who don't live, I mean, okay, it's a belief, but look at the rate of domestic violence or people living in unhappy marriages. We can't see that, and it's epidemic proportions. So if that really heavy-going, awful thing is happening to women in an epidemic proportion, then can you imagine how many people are being unkind to each other or not being seen or being ignored? It's probably also at epidemic proportions. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that it would be the one thing that lifts people, because ain't nobody noticing. Yeah. We're all on our phones, we're just like, we're not engaged.
That's true. I mean, I suppose there's a lot of significance in even noticing people now, because you're right, we are just all walking along with our heads down, looking at a screen, for good or bad. And we do close ourselves off even more than we would ordinarily, I suppose. And that's one thing that I wrote about this. I put a thing in our Women with Attitude Facebook group a few days ago about how we, I suppose, women dress to be, I mean, I heard it 8 years ago, that women don't dress for men, they dress for themselves. And I still think that's true. We dress to look sexy for ourselves. But
sorry, did you mean we dress for other women to feel good? Or for
I don't know.
people?
I think we dress to feel good. I don't know. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I suppose I hope I'm not the only one that I dress to feel good for myself. I don't necessarily dress hoping that people will look at me. But I mean, there's a dress that I wear. There's like a red, yellow, and blue dress that I wear quite often, and people still stop me and say, that's an amazing dress, and I've sort of forgotten that it was really bright. When you wear something a bunch of times, you sort of forget that it's very distinctive. But I still get compliments on that dress, and you're right, it's more the fact that I don't feel particularly amazing in that dress because I've worn it so many times, but the fact that people would actually stop and look up from their screens and say, oh, that's a nice dress, really, it kind of snaps you out of the coma that you're in as well. It kind of makes you present as well. And there's been times where I've been rushing to get my son and I'm just, juggling a dozen things in my head. And if somebody says, oh, that's a nice dress, then it does actually, kind of slows you down and think, oh, thank you.
Brings
and
you
you
back
sort
to
of want to
reality.
acknowledge that moment. Yeah. So it kind of works both ways. It kind of gets both people out of that thinking / screen coma, I suppose.
I definitely think it's a win-win. I definitely think that it's definitely win-win. But I also don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to do it unauthentically. I just want it to be true. Like, so I think for me it's more about promptings. So a couple of things happened too, where I lost my brother about 27 years ago now. And one of the things that came from that as well is not wanting to let opportunities pass. And I think that in that moment that you think something or feel something strongly and then we don't say it, I think in my growing up years, I had a lot of that. And I think when one of the things that for me came out when he died was, it's like, I don't want to hold back those things. So if that means complimenting someone or putting yourself out there or speaking up, then I'm going to do that. So I think that's kind of where it snowballed. But before I was looking up, Annabelle Crabb did a tweet last week to the city bus driver who just now waited while the older lady walked up the aisle until she got settled before he took off. Even though it took a minute and you watched it carefully, in the mirror for her to be safe, you're a good human. And I just love that that she just put that out in the world. And then the replies are amazing. But some of the replies are like, oh, that'd be right. Another woke, blah, 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 chance to be virtuous and all that stuff. And I was like, far out, man. What is wrong with our society?
Yeah.
It's like, it made her feel good. And she just wanted to acknowledge that was a good human doing a good thing in the world. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think that's a good point, that when we hear about people being kind to each other, it actually makes us feel good. It actually creates good feelings in us as well. And I think a lot of that is connected to what we talked about last time in terms of feeling like your community is full of good people as well, feeling safe and feeling like there are people who have that abundant mindset and are going out of their way to do kind things for others. I think that's a really reassuring feeling as well. And having those moments, recorded on Twitter even, I think that's a good thing. I think that is really, just adds a positive feeling about where we live and who's around us as well.
Well, I think isn't it the reap what you sow kind of model as well? Like, so I suppose also topical at the moment would be the people out that we see, out in the world, or celebrities or whatever, like Ellen DeGeneres, people like that, who have made a living about being kind, and then the reality was something different, supposedly, and that is always something that weighs heavily on my mind too, because I don't have time to be two different people. You know what I mean? Like, I can say it because I just do it that way. So I feel grateful that I can just be that way. But I'm going to be the same when you talk to me in person, or when I go up on a stage, or when I'm facilitating 100 people in the room, or when you see me at home. I'm the same, right? I'm flawed. I get cranky. I've yelled at my children, and then apologized because I'm human and said that I'm sorry. But I don't like people who are authentic and kind only for a certain time in camera, when cameras are on them and stuff.
Yeah, doing it all for show.
Yes.
So my final question to you, before we move on and talk about what we're doing next, is what
tips do you have for people who, and you sort of touched on this a little bit before when you said, I think we all get an urge to communicate and to reach out to people, and it's important to act on those urges because, you do have that sense of, a sense of belief that you can, brighten someone's day for just a moment and make them feel good about themselves or make them feel seen and so on. But what tips would you have for people who do feel that urge to connect or to recognize when somebody's done something kind or when they are looking wonderful, but they just can't, it's just stepping out of their own shield to to sort of break through those layers and connect with somebody else. What would you suggest to people who do have that instinct but can't quite, bridge that gap?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people, everyone assumes that I'm an extrovert, but I'm actually an introverted extrovert, which means I do love people, but I also need to recharge, and I can be quite shy, and as well. And people kind of think, oh, well, that doesn't compute, right? There are people, though, that really struggle with this. And so the first thing I would say would be just don't beat yourself up about it. Just notice that, because if you really wanted to and you didn't, it becomes then a berating exercise. Oh, damn it, I didn't do that thing that I really wanted to. And then it becomes really about how we're whipping ourselves, like with the big invisible whip that we do. And we really do, women, whip ourselves if we're conscious of it or not. But goodness me, like we've got to put the whip away. I definitely got to put the whip away at times. And then I think it's just a case of, just try again next time if it just doesn't come naturally, or, even if you gaff it, like it's just a
Doesn't
moment.
matter.
It's just a moment and it doesn't matter. And I do really believe and think, like I've had people say to me, and I've had it happen to me as well, that, I remember one thing you said to me, you just brightened my day, or you said something that just completely changed how I thought about things. And I was like, oh, really? And, when you get those kinds of things back, that blows my mind. I remember after my baby daughter was born, and I had a really tough time because I'd had 6 miscarriages, and then I had my daughter Annie, and she was in the NIC unit, the neonatal intensive care unit. She was 10 weeks early, and she was only 900 grams, and I'm now out of hospital, but she's still in hospital. And I'd had this really difficult morning with a nurse. I'd had a nurse yell at me, right? Because I think the nurse didn't realize the impact and was just tarring everyone with the same brush, that she just all thought I don't know, doesn't really matter. But I went with my husband to get a coffee, and the woman behind the coffee shop, I'd seen her a few times. It was at Westfield, I think. And she said to me, I just want you to know that I'm giving you your coffee complimentary today. And, because I just think you really deserve it or something. And I just looked at her and I said, oh, thank you. And she said, you've just had a baby, haven't you? And I said, yes, how did you know? And how she knew was the little pink tag was still on my wrist. Right, from when, and I didn't notice it was under my sleeve, and I burst into tears. And she didn't have to give me a free coffee, but it was just, I don't know whether the look on my face. So I've had those kindnesses given to me as well, and it's just kind of like, I will never forget that moment that she did that, like, because I'd had a really shit morning. So like, you can't underestimate the impact of our words or our gestures, and what we do really do make a difference for people.
That's so beautiful. I just love, all the words that you've just spoken then, and I felt a little bit teary-eyed. I think that's me in all the podcasts. But
because I've had a baby in the NICU. I don't know if you have too, Larissa, but I have, and I remember standing in the supermarket, and I could only remember coleslaw for dinner. I couldn't think of any other food, and I picked up raw potatoes and I started crying. And it's just those, and I had horrible nurses too, and just you describing that is I know it's completely off topic, but it
I
definitely.
know it is off topic.
It's
It is
so
off topic because nurses are
awful, isn't it?
amazing.
They
And
are.
I had some beautiful nurses, but yeah, one like cranky nurse can just throw you off your axis completely. So yeah, I hear you. I hear you so well, Sarah. And you know, like that when you said you're standing in the supermarket and you're buying potatoes and crying, that's the same with a woman who's struggling with a child and, you know, gets all the looks. I will go up and say, you're doing a really great job and it's really hard, and just keep walking. And just the look of like, oh, like, thank you for seeing me almost, you know, or it's, I see you, but I see you and I'm not judging you. I see you and I recognize how hard it is. And why can't we do that more as humans? Because, man, we could do with it sometimes when the kid's having a meltdown in the shopping center. And you still see all of those disapproving, shaking heads, and it's awful. You know, you kind of hope that maybe that's changed, and maybe it has, but you know, if you can make a contribution to someone and make them just feel a little bit less crap, that's easy.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. I'm sure that we would keep talking forever.
People will get bored. People will get bored.
But you know, we appreciate you, and we appreciate, like, I just appreciate, even, you know, when we've had discussions and I've been stressed about something, you've just come back and like edified me and said amazing things, and made me feel awesome. And I know it's the same with Sarah and so many other women. So we appreciate you and everything you do for us and so many women.
Yes,
you do it all. You look, you guys are inspiring to me. Like, that's the thing, I'm learning from all of you as well. So that's works brilliant. Always both ways. I think you're amazing too.
Thank you so much. Well,
on that mutual amazing society.
On that note, we're going to talk about very quickly our next podcast, which is going to be about changing.
What's the challenge?
It is going to be to change a habit. So the reason that we thought of this is because and this is not exactly what we're going to do, but I'll give you some background. So I am currently doing my Miracle Mornings. I've done this in the past, and if you know anything about Miracle Morning, it's a book by Hal Elrod, and he also has a podcast, and it's kind of my thing that I do when I'm doing other things. So I'll listen to the podcast and keep working on, you know, other stuff. And I just love it. There's so many different topics, goal setting, this and that. But his whole idea is that you set your morning through the habits that you set. So he calls them savers. S for silence, A for affirmations, V for visualizations, E for exercise, R for reading, and S for scribing, scribing, like, you know, journaling, that kind of thing. So I've started a 30-day challenge with another, I think we've got about 12 people doing this challenge. We actually got together and we watched the documentary, because it's a documentary on this as well. He was in a really bad car accident and was able to kind of get through it through his mindset, and then started implementing this Miracle Morning concept. And since then, like, you know, there's been hundreds of thousands of people that have done the same thing. So there's a few of us doing this challenge where we get up, and I'm getting up at 6 o'clock. One morning I woke up 5:30, but I turned off my alarm and went back to bed, and then got up at 6. But the whole thing is change a habit. So Sarah's going to just fill us in on how she's going to kind of do this challenge in a sec. But the whole idea is change a habit to create more success in your day, but also overall in your life. So there's a lot of research around successful people, and we'll talk more about this in the next episode. But successful people and what they do specifically comes down to the habits that they make. A lot of them, you know, obviously in the morning and how they wake up and that kind of thing, but also into, you know, like you read about people who read like for 30 minutes a day, or you know, who they surround themselves with, those kind of habits that you can change to create success in your life. So I'm already on my miracle morning. So I'm like day 3 or 4. So I'll fill you in on how that continues, because, you know, there's room for us to have, you know, make mistakes or give ourselves a little bit of grace if we're not perfect. But Sarah's going to do, what are you going to do for this challenge, Sarah?
Well, I did, for this episode, I did a bit of research into, it's more or less on the same lines, but I wanted to make it a little less a little less intense, let's say.
You can build up to it.
Those, yeah, in terms of what we do in the morning. So I was looking at the fact that a lot of people wake up with anxiety. So their first emotion in the morning is anxiety. And I think that's true for a lot of us who are mums and have a mental load. And, you know, your first thought is to look at your phone and go, okay, what can I squeeze in? What's on for today? Where do I need to be? You know, what are the kids doing? Are they awake? All those thoughts that just, you know, sweep through your head like a flock of seagulls even before you've really sort of found your bearings in the morning. So I was looking at, I guess, trying to reduce the anxiety that we wake up with. And obviously this ties into what you're doing, Larissa, but just around having, you know, say 10 minutes of breathing and, you know, quietening and allowing those thoughts to settle so that you are starting your day in a calm state rather than a reactive, frantic, what is going on state, which, you know, I'm sure plenty of people start their days like that, as much as I do myself. I sort of just quickly run this mini movie through my head and go, okay, this is everything that needs to happen today. Okay, go, let's go to do it. You know, instead of just going,
oh my goodness, yeah,
you know, instead of just letting that, okay, that mini movie's run. Now I'm going to spend 10 minutes just breathing. You know, and obviously setting my alarm 10 minutes earlier, maybe not at 6 o'clock. I'm sorry, I won't be doing that. But
that's okay. That's okay. This is something I had to do. It means I have to go to bed earlier as well. So that's a really better habit for me. But there's lots of research as well around just breathing and how good it is. I mean, that sounds stupid because, you know, you have to breathe, but the way that you breathe and stopping and breathing and you know, just slowing your breath down. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that next time.
It sounds awesome. It sounds awesome, girls. There is a lot of research around it.
With it?
I'll definitely give it a go. I would say to this, I was talking about this with someone the other day, and I don't know if it was you, Sarah, or not, but I love what you're saying about miracle mornings and savers. That sounds amazing. And I don't know this person, but I do know that, you know, you open up the Herald and you'll see like a really successful entrepreneur, and this is what they do in the morning, and they lay out their suit the day before and this and that. And there's this part of me that just goes, oh my God, how ridiculous. It's like, because they're a multimillionaire and they've got a million people doing things for them. So they can sit down, and because they've already got a personal assistant that's already all over the communications, and everybody else has got the mental load running around. And so I'm very conscious of that when I read that we're being elevated. Look how successful this person is. So I guess it's like, I see the benefit, but I also know that I don't want that to become pressure that we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
So I've been doing the breathing thing, and I've been doing the thing of what is so beautiful about today. So I've only got a small bedroom, and I'm right next to the window, and there's this beautiful tree in the neighbor's backyard it's just beautiful, and it's all those autumn leaf colors, which I love. And so I just spend about 2 or 3 minutes looking at that tree going, oh my God, what a beautiful tree. I'm so lucky I can look at that tree in the morning. And that I'm just trying to keep it that basic, like just to keep me in, like lift my heart up before grounded before I start going, oh, I've got to get Annie to school, I've got to ring up, change your appointment, like all those kinds of things that you're talking about, Sarah.
Yeah.
And then I've also been doing yoga on a YouTube channel that I just find a 15-minute whatever, and I find that really good. But when I'm not doing it every day, it's like,
habits.
So
we need our habits.
I'd be really interested in following along the habits, because I just want to create more habits. But
Yeah, awesome.
So
well,
it
we will
sounds
see how
amazing.
it goes. We'll be checking in
I will tune in.
Yeah, and we'll find out how you go with it as well. So thank you so much for joining us this
Thank you for having
day,
me.
Andrea. And we need to let everyone know that you can also catch this episode on Buzzsprout. So we are on podcast, but we're also on our YouTube channel. So you can we'll put all the details in the show notes. We'd love you to subscribe so you get updates of new episodes that'll be coming up every couple of weeks. You can check out Sarah at Truthfully on Facebook, and you can also find her on LinkedIn, which is amazing. And you can find me, Larissa, at Larissa Wright, the Holistic Wellness Hub, online and on Facebook. And of course, the lovely Andrea, Women with Altitude, is online. It's on Facebook. We have amazing chapters around New South Wales, and it's a brilliant networking group to be part of. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome.
Good job, girls. Thank you so much for having me.